They know exactly where they want to go, where they want to take humanity, how they want to transform human society, and what their end goal is. The plan is to restrict that and to have digital passports, digital ID, that's going to allow people to either access or not access the internet. And artificial intelligence is slowly but surely going to start taking over. Now it's already making big decisions in military operations, in government decisions. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is conspiracy reality, because yes, it is a conspiracy, but at the same token, they're putting this stuff out. Hey Inspired Tribe, how's it going? It's Jean Nolan here on the Inspired channel. Welcome and thank you for being here. Thanks for watching. I'm coming to you back from the road with an update, and mainly with the intention of answering some of the most pressing questions that we keep receiving, and some of the most pressing perceptions that we also keep receiving. And as so many of you have, of course, noticed, in the world today, in media today, in politics today, the focus has completely shifted. We had a 2-year plus absolute overkill of one story, one narrative, one big threat, namely COVID perceived threat. And now we've completely flipped the script over to Ukraine, to Russia, to this imminent threat. And the questions that we have been receiving over the past years are really very similar to the questions that we have been receiving over the past days. And we want to peel the onion, but we also want to make sure that we really get into some of the depths of this topic here. Now, as you all know, we've been saying this, that really we need to look at much greater connections. We need to look at a much greater picture. And we all need to realize that this is part of a playbook. Now, people always say, well, what is it that we can do about it? And that's why I want you to stick around, because we'll really get to a very, very solid answer on that. Because there are really some very simple and clear things that we can do to change the trajectory of all of this. But what we're seeing in the world today is following a script and a playbook. Granted, most of the people I know that have an understanding of this do not have inside knowledge on the exact steps of that playbook, but you don't need to have that. What you need to realize, what we all need to realize, is that there is a bigger vision, and we're going to get to the importance of that, but there is an end goal. There's a clear end goal, which is, it's probably not an end goal, but it's a, let's call it a chapter goal. And that chapter goal is to really deeply transform human society. So what's coming next? This is one of the questions that people say, is this war going to accelerate? Is it going to escalate? Is it going to expand? Is the whole world going to get involved in this? Now, I can't tell you exactly how this current narrative is going to play out. What I can tell you is what it is going to eventually include, and what you can expect to happen in the following weeks, days, weeks, months, and years. So if you want to know why I can tell these things, because I'm not a fortune teller, and I'm not remote viewing, really, I'm doing what many others are doing as well. I have been doing this for many years, decades really, reading documents the UN put out, reading documents the Bilderbergers put out, reading documents the EU put out, reading documents think tanks that are close to the government, NGOs that the governments themselves put out, right? So one of the things that we knew at the beginning of 2020 is that there was going to be a vaccine passport. And the reason why we knew this is not because we were in with the conspirators. It's simply because Australia, the EU, the US, and many, many other countries around the world had worked on the implementation of vaccine passports for years. They've been putting out documents, they've been putting out a roadmap, and the years 2019 to 2022 were considered a test phase. Now we're at the end of that test phase, and so things are slowing down in that regard, and things are kind of cooling down, which that's what happens at the end of a test phase, right? So now the infrastructure is in place. Now all of this is in place. Now when the next phase rolls around, this will already be in place and will have been tested. So the past 2 years, now this sounds really, really crazy, but the past 2 years were one huge test. The transformation of human society that is in the hands right now, this vision is in the hands of a very small group compared to the population. But what they have, and this is what we always say, what they have is a vision. They know exactly where they want to go, where they want to take humanity, how they want to transform human society, and what their end goal is. And that's what we, even those of us, a lot of us who understand and understand what's happening, are simply lacking. This vision, because we're being kept by the system in a constant problem, reaction, solution cycle, right? Where there's a perceived problem. A lot of times, most of the times, the problem is just perceived. It's created to bring about a certain reaction. It's what we do, fear, worry, and whatnot, and then the solution is presented. And so the things that are still on the to-do list by this nefarious group or nefarious force is a disruption, a deep disruption of the internet. And we've seen this, the small versions of it. We've seen the deplatforming, the censoring, and all of that. But there's going to have to be deeper disruption, big cyber attacks, for one particular reason. Just like the implementation of vaccine passports and health passports is an imperative for this group. And this is not really about help for vaccines. There's a much bigger picture there. The same thing is planned for the internet as well, where now everyone can access the internet. The plan is to restrict that and to have digital passports. That's all going to be one thing. Digital ID that's going to allow people to either access or not access the internet. And the only way to bring this about is to create such a dangerous environment online, to create so much turmoil and chaos online, that the solution is going to be, we need to make sure that we get people on who are supposed to be there. They need to have ID, they need to have a clean record, and what. So there's going to be, all of that's going to be happening. Society is supposed to be kept now ever in an ever tighter, ever more worried, fearful state. But I'm not just telling you this so you can prepare, because these things are going to transpire. See, that's one thing that this is not about hopium. This is not about putting things out and saying, hey, this is all not going to happen. This is more about getting ready for it to happen. But that's just one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is to really understanding how we can change the trajectory of all of this. Because as much as people do not want to see this, the same thing that's happening now in the Ukraine, what we're seeing now, has been happening for 2 years around the world in the big scheme of things. But other things are also happening that we never hear about. And people that have understood now for 2 years and realized that the media is not about reporting, not about news, not about putting out truth, but they're 100% about propaganda, about setting out a narrative. The same people that have realized this are now repeating the narrative that's being brought in the news. And they're telling us, why are you questioning these things? We see the pictures. We know how many boots on the ground. We know. How do you know this? People were telling us the same things about COVID stats, testing, about mortality rates. And if you have been paying any attention, you know these stats were not accurate whatsoever. They were all built on a house of lies, if you will. Some might say mistakes, but they were deliberately altered to create a certain narrative. And the thing is, why do we trust what the narrative is now? Really the bottom line here is that in the process of these nefarious acts, people are always suffering. People are always suffering. People that have nothing to do with in the grand scheme with these conflicts, that are not involved in these conflicts, that have not started them. It's never the people that start the fires that have to suffer from the consequences of the fire. It's the other people that kind of were just there. And so I want to make this again very clear. This is not saying that real human beings innocent children, women, men are not suffering, because I know they are, and I know they have been, and I know there's a real conflict going on in the Ukraine and other regions as well. That's not to minimize this fact, but as to what is really exactly going on, and what the movements are and what the reasons are, we do not have insight. The media is not giving us, and they themselves don't really have the real insight. They just get fed information that they're supposed to bring to the people. But what we can say is that it's another move on the chessboard by this force that wants to transform the world completely and society completely. And here, this is not a conspiracy theory. This is conspiracy reality, because yes, it is a conspiracy, but at the same token, they're putting this stuff out. I mean, if you doubt that, the fourth industrial revolution is here, read Klaus Schwab's book, The Great Reset. Read the UN 2030 agenda documents. They've been out there for 20, 30 years. Read what the World Economic Forum puts out every day. Read what the NGOs and the government think tanks and these groups put out. Read what the governments themselves put out. Read these documents, and you will see what the game plan is. And the game plan is to bring in this new era of everything is digital, completely digital. Artificial intelligence runs everything. You will have no privacy. You will not possess a thing. You will not be able to own anything. And you will be happy, that's what they say. And complete and utter control, no privacy. The next step in this will very, very soon be the large-scale rollout of the metaverse. Many of you have heard of the metaverse. Mark Zuckerberg has been coming out, even renamed Facebook, basically the mother company to Meta. And the metaverse will be a completely digital, completely artificial reality that people will be able to access and create their own rooms and create their own offices and houses, all virtually, all digitally. They're selling real estate in the metaverse. They will have currency in the metaverse. There will be new communities in the metaverse. And my assumption is that they're going to introduce it much like they introduced, large-scale Zoom and video calls for really right at the beginning of 2020, and this kind of took off. They're going to introduce it when the next crisis affects large numbers of people around the world, whether that will be in the name of climate crisis, where they will say people have to be locked down, or it will be a conflict, warlike crisis, or it will be another health crisis. At any rate, it will be at a time where this will take off, when people will be once again at their homes, locked down and whatnot, and then they will come out with this thing and say, hey, listen, you can still meet, you can go into the metaverse, you can be there, your kids can go to metaverse school, it's going to be so amazing. And this is going to be a huge step towards the dehumanization of natural beings, because especially for children, there's going to be such an overload of stimulation, and they're going to be able to access any kind of toys and comic figures and just really a fairy tale reality, that the real world, nature, is going to feel so boring to them. Everything's going to be way too slow. Everything's going to be so dense and so they're not going to want to engage in the real world anymore as soon as they will get used to the metaverse. So that's one of the things that they will want to bring in, and they will keep people in the metaverse. Businesses will start having meetings in the metaverse, and people will say, why are we even going to the office? Why do we even do Zoom? Let's just meet in the metaverse office. That's the game plan here. We believe, this is my personal belief, I believe this is horrific. It's anti-human. It's the worst kind of development that could happen for humanity, and it will absolutely be a soul killer. This will be a soul killer 100% and a soul thief also. So that's a big thing. So you can see, and artificial intelligence is slowly but surely going to start taking over. Now it's already making big decisions in military operations, in government decisions, in large-scale private sector, but it's going to trickle down to the everyday consumers, everyday small businesses, and sooner rather than later, you are not going to use human intuition. You're not going to use your own judgment, conscience, or even consciousness. It's going to be artificial intelligence that's going to make those decisions for you. And because it's going to optimize income stream, optimize sales, optimize advertising, and do all these things that people are going to profit from, there will be a large group of people that will love it, that will say, this is amazing. I made $120,000 last year. I made $500,000 this year, and I worked less because AI did most of the work for me. And, you know, I can target my customers, and people are going to say, it's awesome. I'm always getting what I want. I don't have to look anymore. I don't have to go out anymore. These things are going to happen to a quite large group of society. The thing is, combined with the biological altercation, with the genetic altercation, combined with putting ever more technology in people's bodies, creating nano networks, all of these things will begin to work together and will very soon, we're not talking decades, we're talking years, and in certain cases months, these things will begin taking over the processes of decision making in your brain, in your body, and there will be a merger of virtual, artificial, augmented reality and the perceived natural reality that you have. And these lines will become very blurry, and it will become very difficult for these humans that are connected to really truly understand who they are as human beings and what their natural decisions are versus what the artificial intelligence decisions are. Now, mind you, this is not out of science fiction books. This is not a few companies that want to do this. This is the largest wave of investment that the world has ever seen has gone into this fourth industrial revolution. People have been working on this for decades. They've been pumping trillions of dollars into this. A whole infrastructure for this is being set up in the financial sector. That's another thing. On top of the internet, what I just said, on top of bringing metaverse, on top of this big disruption, on top of bringing in digital ID and digital passports, what they're also doing simultaneously is destroying the nation's sovereignty by introducing ever more international bodies like the World Health Organization and sanctions on another scale. We've seen this in Canada where bank accounts were frozen and people's ability to use their bank accounts were diminished. People are in investigation for simply sending money to a GoFundMe campaign for freedom truckers. But it's a much bigger picture. It started with deplatforming a lot of people, big names, over the past 2 years, literally pulling them from all the major social media platforms, literally taking away their ability to communicate. Debanking is the new big thing. It's happening. It has been happening to big businesses that are not in line with the current political direction, and it's going to continue to happen on a much larger scale. But the thing here is, it used to be such a drastic measure where in a state of great conflict between nations, as a measure, as a sanction, the ability for important people, businessmen, and government agencies to bank was restricted as an economic sanction measure. It has been used for many decades. That's nothing new. But what we're seeing now is much, much more drastic. It's, hey, Paula next door, her political views are not what they should be. They are not hyper, woke liberal. So Paula, and she's even sending money to political parties that are not woke and liberal. So we're going to have to debank Paula. And we're going to have to let her know that she can't bank with us anymore. And we're going to put her on a list so other banks won't bank with her either. So this is another way of censoring people. But this isn't just happening in censoring. As a matter of fact, I have it on good authority that it is now becoming ever more difficult to even open new bank accounts across the EU and in Switzerland. Even really wealthy businesses that are wanting to move to Switzerland, they can do everything. They can get their tax numbers, and they can get their permits and all this stuff, but what they can't get is bank accounts. So it is a structured breaking down of the economic system in many ways, a devaluation of currencies, pulling, or basically de facto pulling the dollar as the reserve currency for the world. All the world banks needs the dollar for transactions, and the effects are going to be huge. We see it already in we call it the prices are going up. Really what it is really hyperinflation, which means money is being devalued. So a lot of these things are happening, will continue to happen, and there's really nothing we can do about these things because they're out of our control. What we can do, and here we come to the really, really most important part, and we've just touched on a few subjects of the things that are coming. What we can do, and what we need to understand, and I'm gonna talk about this till the cows come home. The advantage that this group, whether you want to call them globalists, the party of Davos, there's many names that people have for them, right? But it's basically the group that wants to get rid of nations, wants to get rid of individual cultures, wants to get rid of religion, wants to get rid of all the things that people live and have been living by, and wants to have a top-down, centralized world government control system, zero privacy, zero ownership, all of those things. What this group has is a vision. They have it all planned out. They have it all visualized. They know what it's going to look like. They know exactly what the world's going to be like, how, what. They have all this. And most people don't even have a vision for their personal life, let alone a vision for their family or community or their country or the next generations as to what they want to create, what they want to be here for while they live on Earth. And this is the crucial point. We cannot, technically, we cannot stop what they're doing, but what we can is minimize the field of their influence to such a small sphere that it's basically not consequential anymore, that it doesn't have an impact anymore. And we can only do that if we create a vision for ourselves, for our families, for our communities, for the future, and come together as a human family and work on that vision and work on that future. This is crucial because otherwise we're going to be kept in this reactive loop where we simply react to the newest problem that's been presented to us, and we're going to be presented with new solutions. And I can tell you down to the smallest things what's going to be presented in terms of new solutions, because we know what the outcome is supposed to be. It's out there. You can read about it. It's not hidden. It's not that your prime minister or president is going to say this is what's going to happen, but it's in all the official documents. They're restructuring governments according to it. They're restructuring the economy. They're restructuring technology. Everything's playing and everything is being funneled into this direction. So the only thing that the human family, even the freedom-loving family, is lacking is a clear vision. We're living by the quarter. See, we're so programmed to think about the next quarter, the next few months. Most people, even unfortunately, a lot of people live paycheck to paycheck, or they're trying to figure out how they're going to get by next year or send their kids to school, and so there's no long-term vision. There's no time for that. And that's most of the work that we've been doing for many years, has been showing people a path on how to do that. How to really create a vision for your life. How to step out of that game and become the master of your own destiny again. And this is really the name of the game right now. And I want to say one more thing, and I know a lot of people are going to point fingers and say, you can't say that. Stop focusing on the masses and trying to wake people up that are so fast asleep that an earthquake couldn't wake them up. If you try to wake those people up that are fast asleep, you're going to waste your energy and your time. You're going to be depleted, and you're not going to have time to invest in yourself and in your family, in your immediate community. The masses, they will take that path. The large numbers of people that are asleep, they'll just follow blindly, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's such a state of deep hypnosis that's just what it is. So please, I encourage you to stop focusing on these people, and don't pity them, or don't, it's their choice on the deeper soul level. They made their choice. It's their destiny. But don't waste your time. It's useless. Comes from personal experience. So really, it's a vision creating process. Please understand, this is fully connected. This is not a situation where you have a big victim and a big aggressor right now. The lines are so blurred. The real victims, if you want to use that word, are always the people. The common people, the moms, the dads, the children, the grandmas, the uncles, the aunts. These are the people that don't want war, don't want armed conflict, don't want to fight their neighbors, don't want to see destruction, pain, and suffering. Yes, this is real. This is horrific. And these are the people that are suffering and that are victims. Yes, if you want to use that word. But in terms of the narrative, it's absolutely nothing like what we're told. It's always, you can always almost assume the opposite. It's not always accurate, but most of the time, the opposite of what the media is saying. But we need to understand that we have enemies that look like friends, and we have friends that look like enemies. So, and really detach, turn the TV off, turn the media off. Ask yourself, why? What is this trying to do to me? Ask yourself, because this is the only reason. Because there's conflict going on in Africa. There's countries in Africa that have huge conflicts, civil wars, atrocities. Why don't you hear about it? Why? Are these people not worth it? There's conflict going on in the Middle East constantly that you don't hear about. Why? Are these children not worth it? Trust me when I say that the only reason why we're being bombarded with this topic is to create a perception, a narrative, and an image. They're going to use this sooner rather than later to manipulate you into more things, more reactions. None of this serves you. None of this is for you. None of this serves peace. And probably in the following days, we're going to touch a little more on this particular situation and things to consider. But for now, today is really about the vision. These people have a vision. They're following that path. They're losing on many fronts, but they don't care. They'll go down in flames, but they'll go down yelling, screaming, and kicking. They want your attention. They want your soul. They want your bodies. They want your energy. And the only way how you can change that is by creating a vision for your own life, a vision for the future that you want to see. How do you view the world? Is it a healthy, natural, beautiful environment? Are we living harmoniously with each other? Are we having good relationships with our neighbors? Are we honest with each other? We need to have the vision, because that vision is going to be more powerful than the vision of destruction, of violence, and of oppression. Okay, this was it for me. Probably went on longer than I anticipated. I just allowed for everything to come through. Thank you so much for listening, Inspired Tribe. We love you. We will be back soon, maybe tomorrow, but Monday the latest. Live streams are happening 2 p.m. Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. And we'll see you then. Be inspired, be blessed, and create your vision. Start today.